Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the BLUEROCK Diamonds PLC investor presentation. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and could be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just please simply type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and you will receive an email to notify you when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we would like to submit to the following poll, and as usual, if you could give that your kind attention, we'd be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand over to Mike Houston, Chairman from BLUEROCK Diamonds. Good morning to you, Mike.
Good morning, and good morning all, and thank you for listening in to our shareholder presentation. If we could move into the presentation on slide 1, which is the company overview. Just talking a little bit about our strategy, which has not changed. The short to mid-term focus is maximizing the profitability at our Career Flow mine in South Africa, which produces exceptional quality diamonds. As shareholders are aware, we are trying to move over to our new plant. This is a major expansion for us, moving around about the 400,000 to 1 million ton production, and it has a couple of real benefits. I think the key is if we get the economies of scale right, and that impacts pretty dramatically on our fixed cost structure and ups the margins between the sales and the cost price. The mid to long-term strategy remains as it is. We feel that we've got a strong team in place, and once we during 2021 bring the new project into play, we'd like to use that skill base to look at other opportunities, brownfield to early stage mining, which we feel we could bring that skill set to in terms of developing. There is some information on our shareholder base. We've been encouraged by the interest on the shareholder side, and we've got a number of shareholders now that hold material percentages of the company, which is much appreciated. I could go to slide 2. On the production update, we did make an announcement of our quarter 2 2021 production. We had a good quarter, particularly in view of the fact that we're really in this transitional mode at the operation. We're using the crushing circuit of the new plant and the, if I could call it, the processing or the wet side of the old plant. At this stage, we're busy commissioning the wet side of the new plant. But we did see a record quarterly production in quarter 2. And one can see there, the tons 48% up, the carats 117% up, and the grade was up on the previous year, but very much in line with what we'd expect in terms of the resource. Obviously, as I think I stated in our quarterly 2, comparing the 2 years is difficult because we did have the impact of COVID in 2020 much more severely than in the current situation, but nonetheless, we're very encouraged by the ability to keep tonnages up during this period. On the diamond size, we've had a very good run from that perspective. Average size of diamond and quality of stones have been good, and that's reflected in the sales price. And I'll talk a little bit about that on slide 3. On the sales, the markets remain very firm through much of this year. I think a point of interest is De Beers have put their price up now for four sales in a row. So there's clearly a demand on the rough diamond side. There's a much stronger buyer presence from last year in the local tenders, and we've seen a very robust demand for the career flay diamonds in the number of tenders we put in this year. The overall market outlook remains positive, as I've said, with this tightness of rough diamond supply. I think of interest, the rough diamond production last year was just over 20% down on 2019, and the view is that 2022 will also be down on the 2019 numbers, and this should keep the rough diamond supply tight for the foreseeable future. I'm just moving across to looking at our sales. I mean, Q2 we sold 5,100 carats at an excellent price of $427 a carat, and this puts us right up in the top 5 or 6 in terms of value per carat. And one can see from the dramatic change from 2020, where we had the impact of COVID on prices and on the number of buyers attending South African tenders. We're still selling our product through our South African tender houses at the moment. We have the arrangement with Bonus to look at offshore selling, but right at this juncture, we are not producing at the volumes that make that option ideal. So we're holding it, and then as the expansion comes into play, we'll re-look at that sometime early next year. Just moving on to the next slide, the expansion project. We've put a timetable in there. As shareholders are aware, we have had delays in this project, ranging from heavy weather problems in the latter part of last year and early this year, and other issues. But we're now in a situation where we can see the end game, and so we're expecting the commissioning of the wet end to happen in July/August, and then the ramp up of production from late August through into September, and then the last quarter of the year be running at the equivalent 1 million ton run rate. We do have a video which we'll show just now, which gives you a sense of the project. Just to repeat, this is a targeted annual revenue at the new tonnage is around about the 16 million. That's 40,000 carats at 4 carats per 100 tons, and using a price of $400 a carat. And our cost structure is targeted at around the 250 to 220 mark. We're still looking at a cost saving area and power, and that will only really come into effect, we think, around in the second half of next year, and that would reduce the cost further. I think it's probably prudent that I just touch a little bit on the situation in South Africa as it stands now, particularly in relation to our operations, which are in the Northern Cape. That part of South Africa is very quiet, no incidents as of now. But what we are seeing is the supply of certain critical elements of our production, diesel, which comes through from the coastal towns, which are having more difficulties, and some items that are important for the project. Some of those companies at this stage are shut down for obvious reasons. So although we're not expecting any material delays and hopefully no impact on our production, I think it's important that we just signal that there is some concerns out there, and we'll obviously keep shareholders informed as things progress. We do have a short video on the operation and the project, which I would ask I show at this point. Thank you.
That's great, Mike. I'm about to play the video and I'll come back to notify you when it's off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We've now turned to strengthening operational team. Over to you.
Thank you, Sam. Just before I go into that, I'd like to just comment, make a few comments on the project. I mean, this is a sizable step up for any management team. You know, we've gone from 3 to 400 and now pushing up to the 1 million ton mark, both on the mining front and obviously with this new plant. And a lot of thought has gone into trying to build something that can handle the wet seasons in particular, which can prove very difficult in this part of the world because the product itself has a lot of clay in it, and it becomes quite very difficult to handle. So a lot of thought has been gone into that to try and do whatever we can to mitigate downtime during the wetter weather, and that includes from the mining front, being able to mine in areas that are less impacted, which requires quite a lot of flexibility, and on the plant having the capacity to deal with some of this wet material, and also to the maintenance in these conditions. Requires a lot of the machinery to be off the ground and easy access to it and easy cleaning and so on. So it's a big step up. It's a big step up from a technical perspective. This plant is less people and more electronic. So the skill set's important, and we've obviously been working hard on trying to build up that skill set ahead of the full commissioning. And that really it takes me through into this next slide, and it covers both the project and the ongoing aspects. I think we've recently appointed a non-executive director, Rob Kroll, who's a mining engineer, a lot of experience, lives in South Africa and is able to get to the mine regularly. He's down there at least twice a month, gives a lot of support for the CEO, and obviously can, from an independent perspective for our shareholders, giving us a good understanding of how the operations are developing in that part of the world, and obviously keeping close to the authorities and the situation in South Africa. And he will head up a small committee, that will provide the board with strong technical input as far as that operational side's concerned. We have mentioned that we brought Binvik in, civil engineering company, who do a lot of erection. We brought them in early this year to help us get the fast track the erection of the plant. That's been successful from a perspective of the quality that they've brought into the operation, and we are very comfortable that the outcome of that will be minimal commissioning and snagging as we go into full production. We did bring in a mine exec again to give some support to the local management team. Strong mining skills and metallurgy skills. We brought them in for a period. It'll be roughly of 3 to 6 months, to just give our team on the ground there, who've obviously got the project and operations to keep their eye on, to give them a bit of support and to just bring some skill sets in, particularly in developing the team that's going to run this operation in a couple of months' time. What we are finding is that we've got some really exciting individuals, but there's a lack of experience, and these consulting players bring that experience in and help these younger folk to develop. So those have been put in place as we stand at the moment. We've obviously got the support of our major shareholder in the Teichman Group, who also do the open cast mining. They've been very supportive, getting much closer to the operation as it expands. We clearly look forward to their support, both in terms of what we're doing right now at Careerflow, and hopefully other opportunities that could occur in this sort of southern and central African region. There is some detail on the arrangements that have been announced with the Teichmann Group. David, I don't know if you want to touch on those. What would you like to add to that?
Well, we're working through with Teichmann the detailed paperwork in order to get this done, and we would hope to complete this process in a month to 6 weeks.
Okay, and I think we just mentioned there that Teichmann are going to take up their option to have someone on the board, and Gary Teichmann, who I think will add a lot of value at that level, is going through the process at the moment. If I could just move on to the final slide, the future. We're obviously highly optimistic as the expansion project comes into fruition. And then just, once again, to repeat, sort of moving from round about this 16,000 carats production up to 40,000 carats a year. And that should generate in the region of 16 million and at a price of 400 and a cost structure of somewhere around 250 to 220. There's obviously a healthy margin there on the basis that we deliver on what we're saying. So that's our priority, and that we're very excited about at this stage. Lots of challenges, obviously, in the next 3 or 4 months as we progress into that area, but a lot of focused attention to it. We're obviously giving some thought to the future. It might appear a little early for some, but we just feel that we've brought this team together, and we should be starting to look a little bit beyond Careerflow from a perspective of where we can take BLUEROCK without taking our eye off the Careerflow importance of the Careerflow operation. So, with the strong team, the strengthened board, a lot of technical skills, experience there, we're in a really positive position to look at other things when the time is right. That really concludes what we have to say, I think.
That's brilliant, Mike.
Thank you for listening. We'll take questions.
Mike, David, thank you very much indeed for updating investors today. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of the screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. I'd also like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company, and immediately after this presentation has ended, you'll be redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. Mike, David, we've got a number of pre-submitted questions, and of course, you'll note there's a number of questions that have come in the live event, but perhaps I could start off with these, if I may. The first question reads as follows: what alternative power options are you currently looking at?
Okay, we have, I think, publicly stated that we were looking at linking up with the national grid, which is around about 20 odd kilometers from the mine. And since reviewing that and going through, obviously, the project process that we are going through now, we are just taking a much closer look at not only the Eskom option, but other options. A number of South African companies with the improvement in solar and battery storage and things like that are looking at their carbon footprint and looking at alternative power from that perspective. So we're just stepping back a bit. We've got a team of experts and suppliers feeding back information on what all these options amount to, what the cost structures, funding facilities if they're available, etc. And we hope to have that exercise completed probably within the next couple of months, and then we would look to making a decision as to how we should progress. There's no doubt that 100% diesel is the most expensive option, and certainly environmentally not ideal, but in the circumstances one has no option at this stage. So we're trying to see if we can't get a blend of different power solutions that we can look at, and then decide on a way forward.
Thanks very much indeed, Mike. I know you touched on the ops team in your presentation, but the question reads as follows. You've grown the ops team quite rapidly. Are they at the mine site permanently now?
Yeah, we have built the operations team up. We've got the majority of skills that we require on site. I think mainly there was a big focus on mining stroke engineering. So they're in the system, and we're carrying that group now. They're obviously developing, helping in the project, but also learning their skills on the old and new plant as we develop it. And as I stressed, I think in support of them, we put in this leg above in terms of bringing some experience in to assist what is a youngish team in its development. The site itself leans towards a fly-in, fly-out type operation. Some people do live in close proximity, but the majority of the more skill set come in and have a rotational type structure.
Thank you, Mike. Just a couple more questions, if I may. The first one reads: do you have any other new projects in the pipeline?
I think I touched on that. We've been having conversations with parties as to what we might be looking for, and so we've sort of got the process moving. But right at the moment, our main focus is career flow.
Thank you. What's Rob Kroll's role, and what will the new technical committee be doing?
Again, I think I covered that. Probably just the last part of that question is we felt that it's important for shareholders to have an independent non-exec with a technical background. At the moment, we've got an executive chairman and a CEO and so on. And we just felt by having Rob Kroll come in as a non-exec but with strong technical skills, it provides our shareholders with an independent perspective on the operation and things like capital spend and et cetera, et cetera.
Very good, thank you, Mike. And the final question, if I may, that we've got ahead of today's meeting: the weather seems to cause major disruptions. How far will the new plant go in mitigating this?
Well, again, I think I have covered that. With all of these things, I think there is a bit of a test when the time actually comes. A lot depends, particularly in this part of the world. The weather the rainy seasons can fluctuate dramatically. I mean, we've had 2 in a row that were sort of 20-year highs, and then prior to that, we had 2 very dry seasons. So you can have that variety, but if we get a very heavy wet season, it'll be very interesting to see how all the mitigating factors we put in react to that. But we are confident that this operation will run a lot better than the previous one, which was had some very serious design flaws in terms of dealing with wet weather.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Well, look, that takes care of the questions ahead of today's event. Perhaps I could just hand back to you, David. If I could ask you to open up the Q&A tab. You'll see there's a number of questions that have come in from investors today. If I could ask you to read out the question and then perhaps where appropriate, give a response, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. When there were a number of similar questions in relation to what's going on in South Africa at the moment, so I'll read those out as together, and perhaps Mike, you can address them as one. So first question is: has the rioting affected operations in Africa? Are there geopolitical risks investors should know about, and how many miles away from the rioting are we? So Mike, do you want to just sort of address the issue of the current situation?
Okay. Our operation is in the Northern Cape, which up to now has had no riots or looting or any political activities with regard to what's going on. We are about 400 to 500 kilometers away from Johannesburg, which the Gauteng region, which has had quite a bit of activity. We're quite reliant on with fuel and things and that from an area, the KwaZulu-Natal, which is down on the coast, and they have had pretty serious activities as well. So although we're directly not affected, and at this stage we're not aware that this activity is spreading outside of certain key political regions, we're obviously monitoring it quite closely. We notice that the South African government is obviously reacting strongly to it. They brought a lot more troops on the ground to support the police, and all we can do at this stage is monitor it closely and take whatever opportunities we can to make sure that our operation can continue running while we hope the matter is resolved. I don't know if that covers all of those, David. Is any other part of there that?
No, I think that covers it. And then a COVID-related question. So, bar an outbreak of COVID in your mining camp, do you envision the government to lock down and force the company to stop mining again, as they did in April last year?
Okay. I think just. South Africa again is definitely going through another phase of COVID. Probably, I think there's talk about it being as serious as any of the other previous runs they've had. The government position is being to keep business going as best possible, and we've had apart from that early stoppage for sort of 45 days and. Early last year, we've had no stoppages due to COVID. We do a lot of work on site in terms of testing, and if we do have cases, because we've got this transition population coming in and out, there is a process that we follow, and we up to now we've managed it with minimal disruption. We suspect that certain areas, if it does increase, certain rules might be brought in to tighten it down a bit. But I think the government strategy is still to try and allow business, and particularly the mining side, to continue operating as long as they have these protocols in place. The other side of the COVID, and probably the other side of the issues going on in South Africa, is what impact it will have on the tender houses and visiting buyers and in that area. And we've seen a very encouraging step up of buyers, a combination of more people coming in, but also a combination of the international buyers being more active in appointing local agents to attend tenders, which we hope will give it some stability. But obviously mobility becomes key things with these tenders. So again, we're monitoring that closely, and we have a tender coming up in a couple of weeks, which obviously will be a test case in establishing the reaction of the buyers, etc., to the current situation.
Thanks, Mike. Then a question about the future. So you mentioned looking at new projects. The company has not managed to hit its production timing cost targets. Do you think that you should prove your ability to hit these targets for 4 continuous quarters before contemplating new projects?
I think it's a very valid question, and certainly from our perspective, we will not, take any focus off what's going on now to try and progress something else. I think at this stage it's much more about a thought process, what minerals might interest us, what opportunities there might be out there in the area of our expertise, but certainly nothing along the lines of distracting us from what this absolutely critical aspect that we're doing now. I think our success is delivering this, and that will be a critical part of encouraging other people to get involved with us in the future.
And finally, a question about dividends. Are you planning to distribute dividend?
I think it's somewhere down the road. Obviously, if we've got free cash and we've got nothing else to do with it that we think can add to shareholder value, we would definitely look at that situation. But right at the moment, it's a little way down the road in terms of making that call. But as a policy, yes, if we think it's the best value for shareholders at that time.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much indeed, David. I think you've probably addressed, I guess, most, if not all, of the questions that have come through. I don't know if there's anything else that is around, or perhaps I could hand back to Mike just for a few closing comments. I know investor feedback's important, and then we'll be able to redirect investors to provide you feedback.
So just one more question that's popped in actually, which is suggesting that we should drive the share price through performance before issuing paper to enter new projects, and that's quite right. Fully agree.
Agreed.
Perfect. Well then, Mike, perhaps I could just hand back to you just for a few closing comments, and then what I'll do is I will redirect investors to provide you their thoughts and expectations.
Thank you, Tom. Well, I mean, again, just to thank those who've listened in, we appreciate it. I would sum up our situation at the moment is pretty challenging and tough right at the moment, not only with trying to commission a big project, but also with some of the other external challenges that we've got out there at the moment. But we feel we're at a turning point, and at a time where there's a big opportunity from an investment perspective in BLUEROCK, from a market perspective, as we turn this corner and the production increases. So we're really excited about the next 4 to 5 months, and hopefully a lot of good news will come out in that period with regards to the progress we're making in taking BLUEROCK into quite a different space. I just thank you once again for your time.
Mike, David, thank you for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of BLUEROCK Diamonds PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes the session, and good morning to you all.